Today on Classroom Dynamics.
Tell your story. Telling your story isn't bragging. It is actually helping your profession, because we think when we do great things at the district or at the school site or in our classroom, oh, they know. They're looking. No, they don't know. They're not looking. Everyone's busy doing their own thing. So we really need to be intentional about telling the incredible things happening in classrooms all over this nation, in public education, and all the things happening at the sites, and then all the things happening at the district.
Welcome to the place where ideas collide. Adam Todd's here to be your guide. For teachers and techies, tracing the spark. Classroom dynamics, where we leave our mark. Let's dive in deep, the future's bright. Innovation shines like morning light. Teachers and tech, hand in hand we go. Welcome to the Classroom Dynamics Show.
Classroom Dynamics is sponsored in part by Logitech Education, empowering student voice and creativity with innovative tools like the Logitech Reach Adjustable Content Camera and the Zone Learn headset designed specifically for student comfort and focus. Discover how Logitech is transforming classrooms at logitech.com/education. Welcome to Classroom Dynamics, the podcast where we unlock the future of education. Hi, everybody. I'm your host, Adam Todd, and today we're talking about the power of telling your school's story and why strong branding can make an impact on every level. Joining us is Dr. Renee Bryant, the co-author of the Ed Branding book and host of the Your Story Matters podcast. We'll explore how districts, schools, and teachers can literally become the media, empowering students, staff, and families to share their stories, and how strategic communication can build trust, engagement, and even support funding through school initiatives. Get ready for practical tips to take control of your narrative and celebrate your impact. And it's all coming up next on Classroom Dynamics, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Classroom Dynamics is brought to you in part by Higher Ground Gear and the Vaulted Cell Phone Pouch, the smarter, faster way to create phone-free classrooms. Built with military-grade construction, RF shielding, and a high-decibel Velcro closure that stops distractions before they start, Vaulted keeps learning focused and secure. No locks, no end-of-the-day bottlenecks, just durable, easy-to-clean protection that gives students what they need most: attention, connection, and calm. Upgrade your school's approach to distraction-free learning with Vaulted at Higher Ground Gear. For more information, visit hggear.com today or contact us at info@hggear.com. Bullying affects every school, but together we can change the story. Box Out Bullying brings powerful bullying prevention education to life through engaging interactive theater that gets students thinking, participating, and learning in meaningful ways. Through dynamic school assemblies, classroom workshops, and training for educators and families, Box Out Bullying equips entire school communities with the tools to build empathy, confidence, and respect. Whether in person or online, these high-energy programs inspire students to be upstanders, not bystanders, and help create safer, more inclusive learning environments. Make your school a place where every student feels seen, supported, and valued. Box Out Bullying. Empower, include, respect. For more, visit boxoutbullying.com today. My guest today says becoming the media isn't just for big outlets, it's also for teachers, schools, and communities ready to tell their story and make a real impact. Today, author and podcast host Dr. Renee Bryant is here to explain how teachers and districts can literally become the media by building their own brand and engaging their communities in ways that are very social, very actionable, and very 21st century. Welcome to the show, Dr. Bryant. Awesome to have you. This is going to be such a great conversation. I think so many people, so many teachers want to know how to actually brand themselves. And this is just going to be the perfect opportunity for them to learn something.
I'm so excited to be here with you. And I have to say, you're also the boss of branding. So every week they listen to you, they get some clues about branding and marketing and public education and why it's important. And I'm just so happy to be here. It's a privilege to be here with you.
You know, listen, I really love the book. I love the whole idea of the book. I'm sorry I didn't think of it myself, to be honest with you. And I really do completely understand why teachers, schools, and districts should be building their brand. And it makes perfect sense to do so with the technology that's available to all of us right now, right? So before we even get started, just explain to everyone what ed branding really is.
Yes. So first, I want to shout out my co-author Lynette White. When she and I met, she was a public information officer with Santa Ana Unified School District. Over 40,000 students. She was actually an executive assistant, like a secretary in the superintendent's office, and the new superintendent, Jerry Almendarez, now retired, famous, innovative, future forward superintendent, looked at her and said, "Hey, this is right before the pandemic. Hey, does anyone in this office want to do like some PIO work?" And she raised her hand. And so then she wound up becoming the public information officer for the district. And yes, I saw her work. I was impressed with her work. I actually saw Jerry's first, and I give him compliments. "Oh, that's so amazing, Jerry. You're doing such good work on social media." And then the secret was that actually Lynette was doing it. So little secret for all of you out there following superintendents, probably someone else posting for them, right? And so, yeah, I contacted her, seen her present a few times. I have a background in marketing around the music industry anyway. And so I took that from, there to then my classroom, and had, my Miss Bryant's class Twitter page. Then when I was at a site, I was the one doing all the social media for the site. And then when I became a leader, at a site, and then a district had, was the one responsible for either creating or maintaining those if we didn't, and then go into the district, do have a PIO, but both districts that I went to as a formal leader, they weren't really using social media at the time. And so I would say, "Hey, do you mind if I do this? I can add to it." They're like, please help us. There's too many things going on. Help us do this." And so, yeah, about, I guess, 2022, reached out to Lynette and said, "I see all this great work you're doing. It's on my heart. Like, I really feel like it's important for everyone in education to tell their story. But I think maybe they, one, don't know how to do it, are looking for some tips and tricks to make it easier and faster. And then also, I think educators by nature are humble. And so they think, I don't want to put something out there. Someone will think I'm bragging." And so I said, let's write a book, that kind of covers all that and has leadership in it too. You have your PIO experience. You're coming from that world. And then I'm coming from this, formal leadership experience. And let's put it together. So that's how the Ed Branding book, How to Build Educational Leadership with Social Influence, was born. And we both had presented, and we'd always have this graphic from the World Economic Forum, their Future of Jobs report. And always, and even now, for the newest report that came out in 2025 that projects the jobs from now to 2030, they have leading with social influence as one of the top 10 skills that our scholars, that humans overall need. So we're really proud of the book and proud, of the work that we've done, and excited for educators, to let go of that. Okay, I need to be humble. No, tell your story. Telling your story isn't bragging. It is actually helping your profession. Because we think when we do great things at the district or at the school site or in our classroom, "Oh, they know. They're looking." No, they don't know. They're not looking. Everyone's busy doing their own thing. So we really need to be intentional about telling the incredible things happening in classrooms all over this nation, in public education, and all the things happening at the sites, and then all the things happening at the district. Because some people, like, having been a teacher leader, you're like, "Oh, the district," right? Because you don't know what they're doing, right? So the district needs to also market what they're doing, the work that they're doing to support the sites, the visibility of them, like the leadership there too. And I also say, when I say educators, I also mean our classified staff. Our classified staff, they're educators. They're supporting the education of our scholars. And so however they can tell the story, because they usually live by the schools. And I'm also talking about our community partners, our community colleges that we work with, our partners that are solution providers. Like, there's so many partners out there, our faith-based institutions, all of the institutions around us, our city officials, all of us. It takes a village not only to raise a child, but it takes a village to tell the story. So yes, that was a lot, but that is why Ed Branding, the book, came about, and why it's so important, and why people should lean into it and not lean away from it.
Right. And it leads to a whole new level of transparency. You're talking about, like, you know, people used to say being transparent was, you know, sending home a letter to mom or dad, or, you know, like just sending home the paperwork that goes home, that kind of communication. That was transparency back maybe 15 or 20 years ago. But with the technology that we have today, transparency could be on so many multiple levels.
Yeah, I agree. And we talk a lot about, you know, we as education, you know, people who are not in education, they only think of education of how their experience was and how the experience is for their children. And so it's an experience that was a long time ago for them. And then what they're seeing, what they're, you know, what's being put out to them, or the little bit that they can see into the classroom. And obviously during the pandemic, they got, you know, a view into like what education was.
Sometimes teachers got a view of other things that we didn't want to see.
Right. Well, that too, right. All sorts of wackadoo, like
two-way street there, right? We got to look in the house and they got to look into school. It was quite an interesting experience.
Yeah. And that's not bad, right? So to go off on a little rabbit hole here, I'm a big proponent of home visits, making sure people are trained to do home visits, and do them if they're willing to, and not by themselves, but with at least two people. And yeah, before I became an administrator, national board certified teacher, and there's a component number 4 that's all about how you engage your parents, your families, your community. And so that was my project, is doing home visits for every single one of my students. And it is powerful. And so if that was the first time people got to see into the homes of their students, it's super powerful, because we all have an idea, and then you see the reality, whether it's super positive or there's challenging aspects. And you also see all the funds of knowledge that the family has as well. So yeah. So now fast forwarding to right now, they got to see it. Now they want even more. I think the families want more. They want to really see. And that leads to like parent learning walks, community learning walks. And I'm a big proponent of like, we're not the only game in town, right? So I work, I've always worked in public, brick and mortar. Now I'm at a public charter school, and we are still competing with private. And I think maybe I've seen it, some of us that are on social media. There is a private charter that is charging $75,000 per child. And so we're also competing with that, not for all of our students, but so I think the more we can show all the value that we give our scholars, the more support we're going to have. I think that we assume, again, that people know what we're doing. They don't. Assume they don't. Assume they have no idea what we're doing. So when we adopt the science of reading and we adopt a new reading program, that was hundreds of thousands, if not $1 million that went into that. Yeah, maybe film some children that have releases, media releases, film the child, the teacher, film the product. People want to know, like, what is going on? Like, why is this? And so if they can see a little video like, hey, we made this investment, we want to show you what it looks like, and this is the outcomes that we're having, that helps people have more confidence in the decisions that we're making, whether it's building a new gym and putting a time-elapse camera at the top so people can see, wow, look, this new gym's coming into our school, we've been waiting for this, whatever it is. And I think that helps, because we, at least in California, we go for bonds. And so we're funded a little bit differently than other states. That's why we're still like the lowest, even though we have the highest income. Like we have more income than actually some countries do. We're still one of the lowest funded states for public education, and it has to do with property tax issues. But nevertheless, when we want more money for education, we go for bonds in our districts. And so I think that that's a part of it too. The more that we are lifting the veil, telling the story, showing how we're spending money, how we're educating, the more people are going to support those things like bonds. At a very superficial level, they're going to support the ask the more that we're showing them and inviting them in.
Right. So now you kind of touched upon what I'm going to ask here, but and you mentioned your co-author, who is Lynette White. Both of you emphasize the idea of becoming the media. And I'm going to put that in quotes, right? Quote unquote, becoming the media. What does that look like for educators today? And why is it really so important to shape how that community sees your school? Because you touched upon it a little bit, but why is that importance there? What makes it so relevant to the connection between home and school?
Yeah. So I want to give credit. We did not come up with that phrase, and we probably should have put it in quotes. And I'm not even sure the man whose book is titled this, that he came up with it. But the book is Noam Chomsky. It came out in the 90s. So I am dating myself. And he
what's old is new again, right? I mean, and that's true in education a lot, right? So
yeah. So in a time where there weren't, not everyone, there was no social media then. So in the 90s, just to clarify, all the youngins, there was no social media. And there were things like fanzines, and you were creating your own magazine by creating a fanzine about something, and fanzines were on all sorts of topics. And so he really encouraged people to become the media, meaning like you don't have to depend on the three conglomerates that have a monopoly on the media to get information out. He encouraged people to actually counter that and make sure that diverse viewpoints are being represented. So that is where that phrase become the media. That's where I got it from, at least. And so
but today it takes on a whole new meaning.
Yes. So we've all become the media. This whole Andy Warhol thing of everyone in the future will have their 15 minutes of fame. And, like that is real. The movie where the guy is like, it was like, oh my gosh, someone's filming their life. That's real. All that is real now. So what is it? That reality is actually imitating fiction, right? And so, we all, you can either allow people, as they say, to tell your story, or you can tell your story yourself. And in that way, we all need to become the media and be comfortable with telling our story, so that a counter narrative doesn't come out. And so when I talk about becoming the media, it's not just for educators, because I could see, maybe a principal listening and saying, seriously, lady, are you telling me I need to be the PIO plus do all the things that I'm doing plus, or a teacher saying, hey, no, you stop. Like, I have a lot to do in my classroom. I got a grade. I got to come up with lesson plans. Like, no, you stop that. You stop talking about home visits. You stop talking about branding. Okay. But, right. We do have new tools. Like I know you give a lot of ideas about how we can use artificial intelligence to help simplify. And so that's the great thing now with becoming the media is you have artificial intelligence, whichever tool you decide to use, Chat, Gemini, Claude, whatever your sandbox is, we have the help of that to get the word out, to make posts. Canva, can make them for you. So there's so many more tools than they're used to make it easier. Now, also, not only do you have that to help you, get the posts out, but you also should be empowering your scholars, right? Like, how are we empowering our scholars to tell the story as well? We shouldn't, just like in the classroom, how they, it used to be the sage on the stage. You and I, Adam, probably had the sage on the stage that taught us. And so now we've learned that, people learn better through experiential learning, meaning they need to do it. You learn better by doing and teaching other people. And that's why the teachers, they know it so well, right? So we need to empower. So the same thing, the teachers, the PIO, how are we empowering the principal? How are all these adults empowering our scholars to tell the story? And so, for example, at Anaheim Union, we made sure to have our English language development class, our scholars that were plurilingual, multilingual in that class, they were doing podcasting. So that is covering the standards of listening, speaking, reading, and writing, but in a fun way that's actually something that they could do and monetize, right, one day. And so that's way better than open your book, practice this dialogue, or even in world language, right, where we used to have to conjugate verbs, So it's a real world way. And we talk about bringing the real world in the classroom, or CTE into the classroom. That's a way of integrating those things, right? English language development class plus some CTE. And so another way is, how are we empowering our parents? Really proud also, my last district was Anaheim. I've only been with Gorman, for a couple months now, and I'm excited about all the things we're going to do to empower everyone there. But I could talk about Anaheim and say, we had parent ambassadors, and we counted on them to help tell the story on social media. And from being in a district, sometimes people can be negative on the district website, and you cannot censor them. So people know, you either have to lock your comments down to where no one can comment, or you have to open them. You are not allowed to censor them unless they are a form of harassment, or they are specifically targeting a protected group, like what would be Title IX, right? So in that way, you can delete certain comments. But let's say they say, "Oh, Renee Bryant is the worst administrator ever on the planet." You cannot, you cannot delete that. That has to live there. So you depend on your parents to say, "Hey, have you been there? Have you been to that campus?" And once you empower your families who love your district, I've seen it at Anaheim where our parents, like, the PIO doesn't have to do anything. The parents are on there, like, "Hey, here's a different thought. Hey," and that's just one example, right? And that's protecting the narrative that you're putting out so that people see other sides. And it's always better for someone else to either brag about the district, you want to, but it's even better when our families or our scholars, our community partners are telling our story. So yes, educators, tell the story, and empower people around you to help you do that, to lighten your load. Another thing, I had the privilege of actually being in Minnesota in the summer, and I got to speak to a lot of administrators and their teams about ed branding. And, one of the things is always like the time, the people, how to manage it. And so how are we looking at the whole system, right? So we have courses. How are we writing A through G courses that can provide, a mentorship, an internship, to be able to help people to do this work? Because this is real life work that could lead to jobs. Yeah. And so how are we making sure that we approve A through G courses, that if we need help at the elementary school, how are we empowering high schoolers to do that? Just like we talk about the teacher pipeline, and we have our scholars come and they work as, let's say, bilingual professional paraprofessionals in the elementary, earning credits at the same time. How can we have that same model around telling the story? So I think at first it seems overwhelming, but I think the more that we collaborate and the more that we lean into liberatory design, asking those who are most impacted for their input, a lot of people want to help us. They just don't know how. So how do we empower others?
So let's bring it down to a teacher level, just in one particular classroom. For teachers who are just starting out, how can they begin to brand themselves effectively? And, what are the benefits of actually sharing their particular story in their classroom, in that little microcosm of a world, as an educator?
Yes. So, thinking about how, I have my Miss Bryant's class Twitter and, had my social media. I think that, first recognizing, okay, how much do you use it overall? It's hard to ask people who maybe don't use it at all. Okay, now you have to do something completely different. But I think you choose one platform. That's always the advice that Lynette and I ask people to think about. Like, obviously, because of our book, we're on all the platforms, but probably a lot of people of a certain age are on Facebook, or maybe of a certain age, they're on Instagram, or a certain age, they're on LinkedIn. But choose one. You don't have to do them all.
Yeah, you don't want them to be overwhelmed. Like you said before, they're doing a million other things, and they would like to show off a little bit or bring that world into the homes. But you have to also be careful, because there's only X amount of hours in the day.
Yes, exactly. And, here's the thing, like, parents, they want to know what's going on anyway. And so, right. They talk to their scholars, and then just depending on, you need to always know if it's a passive release or an active release, like if they have to opt out of photos, and you keep track of those. Make sure you don't show the faces. Always the back of the heads work, but it could be one post a week. If that's where you need to start,
Right.
that's great. One post a week, the parents are going to be excited. The community's going to be excited. Like, oh, that's what's happening there, right? Great to
You know, you sparked a memory because I remember when Remind first came out, and we had gone on I think it was a great overnight trip to Philadelphia, and I think it was Baltimore and Philadelphia. It was 2 nights with our graduating class, and we were sharing pictures just using Remind, and the amazing feedback that we got just from that, just because we were on a trip and we were away, even if it would have been for just a couple of hours instead of like an overnight, it still would have had the same impact. You're bringing them there. They don't have to feel disconnected. They don't have to feel like they don't know what's going on. You are literally showing them what's happening, and they absolutely ate it up and loved it. And Remind is still out there. And yes, you don't have to technically have to do it on social media. There are other apps that you can use to actually get that across. But wow, what a bridge into the home and into the palm of our hands with cell phones now. It is just it's an amazing tool.
Yeah, I agree. Such a great point. And even just last week, we were at Garner Holt Productions Education Through Imagination. And so we took a group of high school students and had them tour and work on animatronics. And they had this great experience. And some of the families drove them, and some of the scholars came on the bus. And the families, after the whole thing, they're like, "Are you going to share the picture somehow with us?" So I mean, it's
now they're
just
looking for it.
Yeah, I mean, really, and
not only looking for it, but expecting it, right? What a difference in a couple of years from looking and hoping you would get something to now almost expecting. And if you don't, you're kind of like disappointed.
Yeah. And, I mean, that is the way of the world, right? So education as a system is still based on a factory model, unfortunately. And I see things changing, and I'm excited about that. But one of the ways that hasn't changed yet is kind of like, here's social media, here's all these things, other organizations and how they communicate and the fast, rapid rate. So think about it. Our families are experiencing that everywhere else, maybe except for education, and education's getting there. And so we have to remember, we have to put on that little cap of like, oh yeah, this is what our parents are expecting everywhere else. And how can we integrate some of those things in a way that makes sense, to be able to serve our families and scholars the best way we can. And I think an example of this is just how many more public information officers or communication specialists there are now since a pandemic. Right. I think the pandemic, it's like, the pandemic, so it seems so long ago, but it's such a pivotal point for so many things, not just technology, not just one-to-one devices, not just, flip learn, like all the things, not just those things, but this idea of, do you remember that every day the superintendent would, like, at least at Anaheim, he would have a recorded message to the families and it would go out on social media. And so that is the frequency in which the families were being communicated with. And luckily we had already had a public information officer, but some districts did not. And so after that, you saw like, okay, these families, they are used to being communicated with frequently. And now how will we do? That was one thing, to be working 24/7 during the pandemic and being a superintendent and, this person working in the health area and be the PIO. But okay, no, now we need someone, a communications professional.
There was a tidal wave of everything all at once for a solid year. And you're right. And it really did change the landscape. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about using branding to help fund school initiatives and how students can even be given a voice that they previously may not have had. So more with Dr. Renee Bryant right after this.
Looking to unlock creativity in your classroom? Meet the Logitech Crayon, the pixel-precise digital pencil built for students. With zero lag, seamless palm rejection, and all-day battery life, it's as easy as turn on and create. No pairing, no limits, just powerful learning across every subject. From sketching ideas to solving problems, the Logitech Crayon brings imagination to life instantly. Logitech Crayon, where ideas come to life. For more information, visit logitech.com/education today.
Every student deserves a chance to succeed. At Catapult Learning, we close learning gaps through targeted tutoring, direct student support, and proven intervention programs. Our proprietary curriculum and our ability to customize with your district's materials ensure every child gets the instruction they need when they need it. For 45 years, Catapult's evidence-based model has transformed schools in New York City and across the nation. Catapult Learning, inspiring students, unlocking potential. For more information, visit us at catapultlearning.com.
Welcome back to Classroom Dynamics. Today we're talking with Renee Bryant, Dr. Renee Bryant of the Ed Branding book. With social bonds and other funding initiatives like you mentioned in California and really throughout the world, what are some strategies districts can use to communicate their vision so clearly and consistently while almost demonstrating accountability so that they could get funding and they can show this is what they need or what they like to do or what they're really good at? What's that strategy like?
So imperative. And we just, talked about how now, the blinds are open, everything is eyes on education. And so, I really feel that when it comes to building trust, it's consistency, whether it's social media or something else, you say what you're going to do, you do what you say. And, relationships aren't built overnight. It takes time. It takes visibility, nurturing, and that is all things that social media, branding, whether it's your, whatever you're using to put out newsletters, whatever, keeping your website up to date, whatever tools, you're using to communicate on a certain day with the parents, and then all your social media sites. So for example, like we're revisioning right now at Gorman. So I won't use Gorman as an example, Gorman Learning Charter Network, but I will use again, Anaheim. It's what I talk a lot about in the book. So, we had a vision of unlimited you for our scholars, making sure our scholars can, that they are college, career, life ready, but also making sure that they're future ready and that they are fully ready to participate civically in our democracy. And so all of those things, and we have these core values, like these 9 core values. And so all of our communications, I always say to people, whatever your vision, mission, and values are, kind of have that lens of like, does it align? Right. And so, making sure. So we talk about parent ambassadors. We talk about our scholar ambassadors. We talk about our community partners, really communicating how we're working together to live up to that mission, communicating on a consistent basis. And again, I want to recognize that this is easier for districts that have public information officers. And then when you don't, that's okay. More small districts exist than large districts in this nation. So how do we work collaboratively, like I talked about, to empower others? And then, yes, when we want bonds and we need support, I always think of the Stephen Covey thing about, the deposits in the bank account. So every time you're consistent, every time you're making deposits into scholars, you're letting people see how you do that. You're making deposits into the sites, into the principals, into the community, and you're making that visible to the community. Then the more the community is going to support you when you need it. And Anaheim's a really great example. Prior to this work that was done, making sure that we had scholar ambassadors, we had parent ambassadors, we had a really strong mission, vision, values, and a strong PIO. And he had people with him that were supporting him, and all of us were on board. Like we had professional learning from that person. We did not pass our first bond that we went for when I was there. But fast forward to 2024, that bond was passed. And I feel like that is very much about the fact that we had communicated consistently about the value we were adding constantly to our scholars, our families, our staff, and our community.
So what are then some of the pitfalls that teachers and schools or districts should look out for when they're trying to kind of start that process of branding themselves? What are some pitfalls that they should watch for?
I would say this. I mean, we're really lucky now. We have artificial intelligence. We have all our partners like, Chat, Claude, Gemini. So we already, it used to be like, I'd have to get these 10 books and read through these books and try to disaggregate all this information. And so now you have a lot of resources at your fingertips to help create what I would say guides for you, right? So one, you don't want the wild, wild west in your district. So you need to really have some type of guide, some type of media guide, press release guide, like a guide for your staff. And so they understand, what the bumper rails are, the guardrails are for communications. That's going to help a lot, making sure it's very clear to them, to all staff. And I say this as a former teacher leader to now a formal district leader. You're always representing the district. And this is really hard because, we're adults, we're allowed to have adult lives, private lives. And still in this day and age where everything is on social media, things are videoed, I think it's a lesson for everyone to just always remember, because education, all eyes are on, right? And so just be very careful what you're posting. Always have that lens. And I think that conversation is a conversation that's important for people to have with their people of just, as you post and you get to have your life, just remember that you're always reflecting. You're a professional, you're an educator, all eyes are on you, and you are representing your superintendent and your board of trustees as you are going out and about. It's a good lesson for our scholars as well, because, they need to know, their own digital literacy, their footprint, all of that early on, because things are different. We didn't grow up with this, Adam, so we didn't have to worry about it. But our scholars, there's so much. I
think they think it's so normal that whatever happens, and it's okay, because to them it's just normal. Where you and I, you're right, we didn't have it. And so it feels different to us, but to them, I think the normalcy of it is a little scary.
Yeah. And I will add to that, first we talk about digital literacy, and then just, for them being able to understand what's true, what's not true, to use their analytical skills, their research skills. And then AI takes that to a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Right. You have some very convincing AI prompted, created articles and photos and different things, videos that look real. And so now it's about AI literacy and how we are helping our scholars to discriminate. And it's hard. I'm sure you've seen the videos where it's like, which one is AI generated? And you guess the wrong one. You're like, how did I guess the wrong one? Right?
It's true. No, you're right. You're right.
All of us need it. So we're all learning together. And that's going to be something that they all need to think of as well. And I want to say, going back to the question about like the importance of branding and education for teachers and scholars, to this idea, and George Couros talks a lot about it. I'm sure you've talked a lot about it too. But, your digital portfolio, right? It used to be when I was a 5th grade teacher and then a 7th grade and 8th grade teacher, Adam, I had a cart, like one of those like square boxes, and it had these green folders and it had the manila folders inside them. And it had a little portfolio of other work. And for parent teacher conference, I would have my students lead the conference and they would show all their parents the work, because that's how old I am, right? But now everything's online, right? So now you have a digital portfolio. And as we think about, and I know you'll appreciate this as a union leader, like, test scores, right? And these satellites, lagging indicators once a year, and we know, Adam, you and I are not given a standardized test every year. It's a thing that exists that we have to do. And still, what do they say? When you don't like the current system as it exists, create a new system that is better. And so I think, and I know Anaheim's not the only one, but Dr. Linda Darling-Hammond out of Stanford, she's the board president of the State Board of Education here in California. She has talked about for years how other countries use authentic assessment. They use project-based assessment, project-based learning. They use portfolio, capstone assessments to really show what the scholars know. And it's not about a one-time snapshot, how well you take a test, how good you are at test taking type of thing, but what do you really know? And so I'm excited. I think that this is the way of the future. We in education, and this has to do with ed branding. How are we helping our scholars build their portfolio? Because that's what really should go. It shouldn't be in an essay and some test scores, some SAT test scores, or some GRE test scores, but a portfolio that is virtual, that shows what we can do. It has videos, it has, paper, it has all podcasts, all the things that these scholars have been doing, digital badges, right? All the things. And that goes on their LinkedIn. That goes,
Yeah.
that's a real world thing, So, so, and also educators, your social media is really your digital portfolio. So when you are thinking like, hey, I want to apply for this next job, I want to, whatever the case may be, or it's just, hey, I want to XYZ, you have ready for you your digital portfolio of what you've done. And it's also what you put out into the universe. So a lot of people already know about my work ethic, right? Because they see it on social media, right? They know where my leadership lies because they see it in social media. So I'm excited. I hope that before, my spirit leaves this earth, and I have seen the hopes and dreams for public education, this factory model completely turned upside down, rearranged, so that we have something that is innovative, exciting, that really reflects what the future of work will be.
Well, let's now get into that, right? Giving students a voice, and you just mentioned it through podcasting, even vlogs, blogs, digital this, digital that. How does that then empower students to tell their own stories so that there's not only the engagement, but you have the learning, you have the cultural portion of it, and you then in turn get learning outcomes that are super positive because it's not the old kind of boring kind of school that we don't want anymore.
Right. So such a great question for this conversation and just overall in this landscape. This is where we need to go. So some people say, oh my gosh, AI will take over for teachers. And the school that I talked about that charges $75,000 a student, they put the students on for 2 hours on the computer. They use AI programs from solution providers, and then they do other things. I'm not saying bad, good, ugly. That's what they do. So what you're talking about, though, is this idea of, okay, AI proof your lessons, right? We need teachers. There will not be a time that we don't need teachers. When I talk about the factory model, I talk about the way you and I were taught. And so how do we as educators, even me as an assistant soup, how do I plan professional learning that is not something that they could just go and watch a video and do on their own? Like, how do I make it experiential? How do I make it collaborative? How do I make it reflective, conversation based? And so, that is, what we're talking about when we talk about future-proofing education and how important teachers are and how important, these tasks that we're asking them to do are. So, I think that, we need, and this is how we started in Anaheim with the question of because some teachers said like, hey, I don't want to use it. The kids they'll just copy, they'll do this. And so then the question was, well, how do you create a lesson that will keep them from doing that? So, and to continue this and to link it back to the question you actually asked me is, that is how, right? Is, once we start creating lessons as teachers or as administrators, modeling this for our teachers, making sure that we are creating things that cannot, be constructed by artificial intelligence, that are actually project-based learning, performance tasks, assessments. Another thing that Linda Darling-Hammond talks about, that's how we know, right, is when they're able to do it. So when you talk about podcasting, when you talk about vlogging, when you talk about blogging, those are all like real world things that scholars can do. And it's really interesting because how people, and I'm sure I was guilty of this, like we kind of made fun of the Kardashians and people, right? But like influencers are a thing. And when I, am fortunate enough to keynote, I always show a picture of this student from Centennial High School who in high school already had branding deals, huge money deals with companies. And why did he have those? Because he was already using TikTok and he was already putting himself out there. So we sometimes in older generations kind of poo-poo things. But in reality, we kind of lean into the unknown, the discomfort, and say like, well, what can we learn from this? because it's a real thing. Influencing is real, whether it's a basketball player who's now gone on to the pros, whether it was a TV show, with a family, or whether it's people like us, doing a podcast. These are all ways that we, at least for us as educators, we are trying to positively influence the landscape of education. And people, oh, you're showboating, or no, not at all. Like, we're putting our story out there, and we encourage you to do the same. So yes, empowering our scholars is important. There's many ways that we can do it, and it's all for the greater good, because you and I do not get multiple choice tests, Adam. We are not
Thank
asked
goodness.
for paragraph essay.
Goodness.
I mean, so many things, right? So yeah, like I said, before my spirit leaves this earth, I hope that all those things have changed. And I hope we're part of that, making that happen.
I think we really will be. We're going to take a quick final last break, and when we come back, we'll wrap things up with Dr. Renee Bryant. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Looking for teaching resources that truly engage and inspire your students? Discover Highly Motivated on Teachers Pay Teachers, your go-to source for ready-to-use lesson plans, interactive notebooks and lapbooks, test prep passages, and meaningful small group projects. Designed by educators for educators, these resources save you time while boosting student motivation and learning. Highly Motivated, motivating teaching resources that engage and inspire. For more, search Highly Motivated on Teachers Pay Teachers today. Welcome back to Classroom Dynamics. We have about 2 minutes left. So if a teacher just wants to dip their toes into the idea of self-branding online, which social media platform do you think is the easiest and really the most effective way to start, and why?
So I would say that as a professional and connecting with other professionals, it would be LinkedIn, and Lynette would agree with me.
I would agree with you too. I think that's a great place to start.
Yeah. And then I would say that, and remember, what you put into it is what you get out of it. So we always say, put a little time on your calendar where every day you're just going to go on and interact with other people, like their posts, comment on their posts, and that's going to come back to you. And as you and I know, like we connected via LinkedIn, right? And that's been the case with other people I've connected with. So it's always great to grow our networks so that we can be better educators and better humans. And that's what we do when we get to connect with fabulous people. And then for parents, I think this generation of parents, so you're a teacher, you're catering to your families, and then maybe same with if you're a high school teacher and you want them to see it on social media, Instagram is the place, and obviously TikTok. So you decide which one you're going to go to. I think families are on both. So it's really just your preference. And
I love the LinkedIn angle because it actually puts your mindset in that professional social media frame first, right? And then you start to work professionally, and then you can start almost allowing the more, I don't want to say looser social media, but the different variety of social media that's out there to kind of come into play. And then, really, and that's when you start bridging the gaps between professionals and families with your kids. I think it's a great triangle that people can really start with, and pretty easy to do.
Yeah. And I would say, like me, I only have my professional sites are my sites. I don't, maybe way back in the day, I had two different ones. But now I only post, what I post is what I post. So when I go to a wedding, I post there, then you're going to see some of that. And then you're going to see my dog when I walk my dog, and then you're going to see some stuff. And so it's up to you. I mean, you can, if you have that time and energy to have a private lockdown one and then a public facing one as a professional, you can do that. And yeah, I agree with you that LinkedIn is the nice place to start.
Me too. Well, listen, big thanks to you for sharing just some amazing insights on branding, becoming the media, and of course, empowering educators. Remember, your story is your story. So, and it matters. So go out and share it, post it, do it. You might as well, right? Before we go, tell everyone where they can go to find out more about you and where teachers can pick up a copy of the book.
Yes. So, you can please connect with me. I am an extrovert that needs introverted times. I love to connect with people. That's how I get my energy. So I want to meet you. I want to learn from you. And you can find me at Renee Bryant, EDD on LinkedIn. And then you can find me at Dr. Renee, RenaeBryant, Renee Bryant on Instagram and Twitter. And I refuse to leave Twitter because I you need multiple voices and representations on it, even though you might not agree. So I'm on Twitter and then Facebook, all the things. And then I just want to say too, that I only put the DR on there. So if you're considering getting a doctorate, do it. And then, yes, you can get the book. Shout out to Dave Burgess Consulting. You can get it at DBC Inc., Dave Burgess Consulting Inc.com, or maybe it's just DaveBurgessConsulting.com. Nevertheless, if you Google Dave Burgess, you're going to find his website. You can get the book there. If you need bulk copies, let's say you're a superintendent or principal, you can get them through there at a cheaper rate. You can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. And of course, being an indie girl, like if you can go to your local bookstore and ask them to order it for you, that would be even better. That way you're supporting your local bookstore. And we do want our local bookstores to survive.
And if you're a brand new teacher, go out and get the book because you already know social media, and this will help you kind of refine it. And if you're a little bit older and you're a little bit more wary of it, it might actually make you feel a lot better. So thank you for joining us. For those who have been listening, thank you for tuning in. And of course, share what you've learned or any takeaways or reflections that you've had, and tag us on X at Class Dynamics or Instagram at Classroom Dynamics Podcast. And you can also find out all of our links, including information about our sponsors, on our link tree at Classroom Dynamics. We always look forward to hearing your thoughts on our episodes and sharing the different ways in which you're using what you've learned. More importantly, share this episode with one colleague who you feel can benefit from today's show. You can also help support Classroom Dynamics with as little as $3 a month at classroomdynamicspodcast.buzzsprout.com. Once again, I'd like to thank Dr. Renee Bryant, co-author of the Ed Branding book and host of the Your Story Matters podcast, for joining us today on Classroom Dynamics. Thanks for being with us. Amazing conversation. Thank you for the time. I appreciate all the great tips you had for us today.
Thank you.
Well, that's a wrap on this episode of Classroom Dynamics. I hope today's conversation sparked something meaningful for you, maybe a new idea, a fresh perspective, or just a little boost of motivation to take back to your classroom. Remember, it's never too late to strengthen your craft, and if there's ever a moment to re-energize your work, why not make it today? I'm Adam Todd, and you've been listening to Classroom Dynamics, a teacher podcast. Follow us on X at Class Dynamics and on Instagram at Classroom Dynamics Podcast. If you haven't already, go to your favorite podcast platform like Apple Podcasts or Spotify and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. We'll be back soon with more captivating conversations, inspiring stories, and strategies that you can implement into your everyday routines. Until then, keep that spark alive and never underestimate the incredible impact you have as an educator. You're more powerful and inspirational than you think.
Did you miss our episode Beyond Phonics? Dr. Marianne Wolf on Ravo, Possum, and teaching reading in today's classrooms? In this deep dive, Dr. Marianne Wolf returns to classroom dynamics, unpacking Ravo, the Possum framework, and how to rethink reading beyond phonics. If you take pride in how kids learn to read, this is the episode everyone's talking about.
One of our major goals is to help people understand that neuroscience helps us understand reading as anything but natural. And that what we are as teachers doing is trying to incorporate in our teaching the major components of the reading brain and what the child brings to it that we can help connect. Okay, now we've talked about expanding foundational skills, and at the top of the list is phonics and phoneme awareness.